I'm Emily Pierini. I'm assistant professor at Sapienza University of Rome, and I'm working on mediumship and healing, mostly in the Vale do Amanhecer, Brazilian spiritualist Christian order. And within this project, I undertaken a visual ethnography of the worship of Dr. Sousa Martins. So in this paper, I will explore the materiality and transformation of this figure of Dr. Sousa Martins. And towards the end, I will discuss also my role, the role of my images in my ethnography, especially in making this figure present. So delving into the complex interplay between spirituality, health, and material culture in Portugal, my research traced the multifaceted worship of Dr. José Tomás de Sousa Martins. He was renowned in 19th century Portugal as a positive pharmacist and physician for his advancement in the research on tuberculosis and his free medical assistance to the poor and underprivileged. What began as a veneration for his altruistic medical aid developed into a fervent popular devotion around his figure after death, transforming Dr. Sousa Martins into a revered lay saint and healer. So his figure crosses diverse realms, from the devotional practices of those who seek miraculous healing and leave votive offerings around his statue outside the medical school in Lisbon, to his manifestation through spiritualist mediums in healing rituals held in the spiritualist Christian temples of the Vale do Amanhecer. My journey into this phenomenon began when I came across mediums incorporating Dr. Sousa Martins in the Vale do Amanhecer in Portugal through my previous research on transnational healing as part of a Marie Curie Global Fellowship. And his presence was striking for being new to the repertoire of the spirits incorporating in the Vale. Then through the ReSpell project, I conducted fieldwork in Portugal in November and December last year, using visual ethnography to unravel the materiality of Dr. Sousa Martins' worship in Alhandra and Lisbon, and in the temples of the Vale do Amanhecer in Porto and Lisbon. So my research examines the transformative dimension of his worship at three levels. Firstly, illuminating the transformation of the figure of Dr. Sousa Martins from an atheist physician into a revered lay saint and healer. Secondly, examining the narratives of devotees to elucidate the personal and transformative impact of his worship in their lives, particularly in terms of healing. And then exploring how images of material artifacts and sensory experience mediate the experience, facilitating these transformative encounters with Dr. Sousa Martins, and particularly how these elements imbue his figure with presence in the life of worshipper and healing practitioners. So starting from Alhandra, his birthplace, the small town just outside Lisbon on the river Tejo, honors Dr. Sousa Martins as a scientist and doctor, with a statue in the main square and a town museum in his childhood home. In Alhandra, the cemetery serves as a focal point of devotion, which is mostly concentrated on 7 March and 18 August, commemorating his birth and death, with devotees flocking in pilgrimage to his tomb and queuing to pray for healing and leaving votive offerings. So the kiosk in front of the cemetery, run by an elderly woman, sells a vast array of devotional items, such as statues of saints and Dr. Sousa Martins, candles, images, and anatomic ex votos, books by a spiritist author, Cunha Simões, and soap and oils for healing baths for Afro-Brazilian and spiritist rituals. So popular Catholicism, Spiritism, and faith healing are visually juxtaposed in this display of devotional objects. And the books of Cunha Simões, sold in this site of devotion, have certainly helped expanding this worship through the Spiritist milieu. These books present Sousa Martins as a healer, include methods of asking him for healing, such as prayers and meditative practices to feel his presence, but especially depart from his figure to disseminate notions of reincarnation, afterlife, mediumship, and so forth. People pray and visit his tomb, living anatomic ex votus, while candles burn continuously, accumulating columns of wax. Marble plaques hung along the perimeter wall of the cemetery and piled on the floor evoke diverse reasons for which people have summoned Sousa Martins' help. They mostly thank for healing, for surgeries, for transplants, but they also extend his sphere of action to other domains. Now, his house was turned into a museum in Alhandra with one room displaying original furniture from his home and medical studio, photos and archival materials, letters and professional recognitions and objects, and in particular, just below the painting portraying him with a collar around his neck with the medal received as a recognition by the King of Portugal, there is an off-bust statue with colored rosaries, also hung around his neck. This scientific image is juxtaposed with the devotional dimension, with both images displaying the governmental and popular recognition. And a notebook open on a table holds the testimonies of faith and gratitude from visitors. Transitioning to Campo das Mártires da Pátria in Lisbon, this place was a former sacred site, Campo de Santana, which was replaced by a medical site with hospitals and clinics, and now the statue has transformed again the area into a devotional hub. Health and faith, biomedicine and spirituality overlap, engage and intersect in the experiences of those who move around and shape this place as such, with devotees appearing every 10 minutes with candles, flowers, marble plaques, and even water and food offerings. Candleworks again molds the candle metal box with different shapes, as much as offerings shape the place, joining the power of gratitude. People feel moved by it, reporting feelings of peace, solace, and faith, and mostly they report to feel his presence. An Umbanda practitioner I met there said that when her son was in coma following an accident, the spirit of Sousa Martins manifested in a ritual in Umbanda in a medium and told her that her son would be healed in the next 48 hours. And 2 days later, she said he woke up and went through a scan, which confirmed he was healed. She added that she could smell ether as used in anesthetic in hospitals every time she feels Dr. Sousa Martins' presence, especially when her relatives undergo surgeries. Around the square, there are some kiosks, and the owner of one kiosk, a lady in her 60s, I will call Maria as a pseudonym, told me about her experience of healing. She was supposed to have a surgery to remove the 3 ovarian cyst and a fibromyoma. She said she prayed Dr. Sousa Martins, and just before the surgery, she had a scan and they had disappeared. Maria had been working there for 35 years, cleaning the statue and selling candles and devotional objects of Sousa Martins, along with the Brazilian Iemanjá, Our Lady of Fatima, São Jorge, rosaries and medals that people place in their houses to protect them. The same variety of statues and candles appeared in Porto in a Chinese shop, where an entire row was dedicated to these devotional objects. And among these, the statue of Sousa Martins was there. The shop owner told me that the statue was one of the most sold, along the one of Saint Rita of Caxias. There is a sanctuary nearby. So besides fueling globalization, Chinese shops are also able to cater the local everyday worship. My exploration of the Valle do Amanhecer, of the past of the path of this figure throughout Portugal extended to the Valle do Amanhecer. And this Brazilian spiritualism was founded in the 1960s in Brazil and spread internationally, opening over 1,200 temples internationally. And there are currently 16 temples in Portugal between Lisbon and Porto. Mediums of the Valle do Amanhecer volunteer to offer healing for free, incorporating different spiritual entities. And in the rituals of healing, they incorporate German and Brazilian doctors. But in Portugal, 70% of mediums incorporate Dr. Sousa Martins. When asked to describe the experience of his incorporation, Fatima, a Portuguese medium in Porto, told me she felt her body pervaded by a sense of peace and light, which is consistent with other descriptions. When asked why the striking presence of a doctor who was an atheist in the ritual of the Valle, the healing rituals, José, a Brazilian medium in Lisbon, told me that he deemed that the charitable assistance of his life finds resonance with the charitable spiritual work of the Valle. Anana, a medium in her 60s, told me her story of illness due to a kidney tumor. The spirits recommended that she attended the ritual that is deemed to be a spiritual surgery, in which Dr. Sousa Martins often manifests. And so she laid down in the ritual space as she was in a surgical table. The medium surrounded her, summoning healing forces, and then the spirits of doctors incorporated in two mediums, projecting forces into her body. Even though mediums weren't touching her body, she said she felt pain as she was being cut, and hands were moving inside her body. But it was then that she held she was cured. So Anna went back to the hospital to have a CT scan before her surgery. Her doctor asked her whether she had a previous surgery, showing her that there was a scar with 3 fissures with staples on her kidney, and the tumor wasn't there anymore. She repeated the exam with the same result, so she didn't need a medical surgery anymore. And since then, she was initiated as a medium in the Valle and volunteers in the temple. According to her, the scan acted as an evidence of the action of the spirit, of a spiritual surgery. The medical diagnostic image recorded the spiritual intervention on matter. So to conclude, images play a part in acknowledging the action of spirits in people's life. Firstly, I refer to the images I made during fieldwork. For example, when I was showing the photos I took of the statue of Sousa Martins in Campo dos Mártires da Pátria, mediums of the Valle pointed to a beam of light with a green spot, projecting on the back of the devotee with a crouch, praying for healing. The beam of light was understood by some mediums in the Valle do Amanhecer as materializing the presence and the healing action of the spirit upon the devotee. In other words, my own presence and that of my camera were key to this dynamic of construction of the entity's presence. Then my own act of filming the incorporation of the spirit of Sousa Martins in a medium in a temple of the Valle, especially the act of asking for permission to film, was integrated in the ritual of healing. When the medium directly in the ritual announced to the spirit my intention to film it, right in the opening of the session. At that point, I had to speak directly with the spirit to explain what I was going to film. I received the spiritual authorization and blessing, and then followed the movements of the hand of the medium with my camera. I moved through the scene, trying to leave the faces out of the scene in order to respect the privacy of those participating in the ritual. This movement was itself participatory, as it is also an invitation to be moved by the action, and concurrently it is an affirmation of presence, or better, co-presence of the researcher, the patient, the medium, and the entity, as the entity was made present through specific gestures, movements, and expression, because I was there filming its manifestation. Secondly, I refer to diagnostic images that my interlocutors deemed to be crucial in their therapeutic narratives. And a CT scan showed a scar on the kidney of the medium of the Valle, Maria's scan showing a disappearance of a cyst, or the scan of the Umbanda practitioner's son. These diagnostic images are transformative in that in these images, spirituality and biomedicine overlap and then merge in the narratives of devotees as tangible evidence of spiritual intervention. Therefore, the worship of Dr. Sousa Martins encapsulates a rich tapestry of spirituality, health, and materiality. And by examining the sensory and material dimension of this worship in relation to healing, we may gain insights into contemporary religious practices and their transformative potential, transcending the conventional boundaries of faith and healing. Thank you.